Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time it's an audio adventure from Big Finish Productions. It is the Fearmonger. So this is the fifth story in the Big Finish Monthly Adventures range, starring Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor and Sophie Aldred as Ace. Basic plotline: they're in 2002, they end up chasing after an alien creature called the Fearmonger. This creature had been created out of the emotions of a planet, and there was multiple creatures created: love, lust, as Ace quotes in the story, hate, anger, fear, and the fear creature escapes to Earth and starts manifesting in other people, causing all sorts of untold fear and uncertainty around people. It's thought for most of the story that the person causing the fear was a right-wing party leader called Sherilyn Harper. With her rhetoric and her speeches, a poor man called Walter thinks that she is the enemy. Her and another man who's scared for his life, Stephen Kieser, have tried to assassinate her a couple of times without much success. The Doctor and Ace use Walter as a way of getting in to try and find this creature. They create a force field generator using equipment in the flat of one of Ace's old friends, Paul Tanner, who she knew from Perivale. And they've used this force field to try and kill and trap the creature. They think it's in Harper. They set up a situation where the local radio DJ, Mick Thompson, is interviewing her. He's a bit of a conspiracy theorist. He's more like talk radio, but it's like LBC nowadays sort of idea, with the kind of slight right-wing conspiracy theorist idea to him. Harper comes in for an interview. They try and use the force field, it doesn't work. They think it's in Thompson afterwards, and they chase Thompson, and they find it isn't in him. And eventually it turns out actually the creature was in Walter, beforehand Stephen, and it transferred over to Ace later in the story. So they've been chasing the wrong thing all the way around. It's very much a very dark type of story. In the meantime, there's another group called the United Front that started to cause terror and fear about the New Britannia Party, which is Harper's party, and there's a bit of interplay and tension between the two groups, the two leaders, which is Alexander Karadich and, of course, Harper, Sherilyn Harper on the other side, and the fear playing between the two of them. Walter falls in with the United Front and becomes a Doctor and Ace's way in to try and finish things up later on. Mick gets involved as a kind of on-the-fly interviewer when there's a riot that happens in the streets, which apparently is between New Britannia and the United Front. And when Ace and the Doctor first meet up with Alex at the United Front, he shoots her out of fear, and she's injured for 3 weeks in hospital, and that's when the creature gets transferred over into her from Walter. It's an interesting story overall, and that's basically the plot line. It's kind of like the intrigue into politics, and very much on a riff of the urban intrigue that was in Survival not long before, because this story comes after Survival in the run of the Doctor and Ace. There's a few good plot points, but let's just go through each of the characters as normal. So we've got the Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. This is the Dark Doctor, the manipulated Doctor, the Doctor post-season 25, so the season 26 Doctor. He's carried on a little bit of the events. He is trying to find out what's happened, but you do see the elements that McCoy's comfortable with, and him and Sophie Aldred bounce off each other like they've never left. At this point, it had been 11 years since they last played together as the Doctor of Ace on any sort of format that's not audio or video. It's interesting. It's a fun little story with the two of them together, and McCoy plays it pretty strongly. It's very much the character of the 7th Doctor we're seeing here. It's not the dark 7th Doctor that we get to see in some of the later stories, but it is certainly a progression of the 7th Doctor that we see in Survival and Ghostlight and Curse of Fenric and Battlefield. It's a natural progression from that. And as I said in Whispers of Terror, this is another one where the characters are progressing more from the television runs, although the 7th Doctor is the first opportunity of expanding the character further into the darker realms that the 7th Doctor is probably known for in the expanded media. And this is the first instance of the development of that, and Ace has become very comfortable around what the Doctor's doing and understands that he's doing it for the good, and there's always that big belief from Ace. And speaking of Ace, Sophie Aldred plays it very well. It sits very well. It's like they've never been off. The two of them just play off each other like they've never been away. So do the other Doctor-companion relationships that we have. Nyssa and the Doctor in Land of the Dead is another example, and obviously Perry and the Doctor in Whispers of Terror. Overall, it's a nice little romp to go through. Sophie Aldred plays the role with Ace the way you expect Ace. There's kind of streetwise, although she does seem to be a little bit more mature and a little bit older the way she's working with the Doctor, but it's definitely a team between the two of them. Ace is trying to learn how to work like the Doctor and be like the Doctor, and that comes across at parts in the story. And the Doctor doesn't really stop her from doing so. He's kind of like teacher-pupil idea, which develops from the original run, which was starting to come through in the old series, in season 26 of the TV series. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see that development, and it's nice to see that Ace is developing as a character. And Sophie Aldred, strong acting performance. She and Sarah Sutton, I think Sarah Sutton pips it, but she and Sarah Sutton share the spoils of the most appearances in Big Finish as their companion character. And we see an older, more relevant Ace in her travels with the Doctor later on. But at the moment we've got the Ace just after survival, and there is that maturity and that full circle there, and she's starting to become a very mature companion, and her traits are there. And the Doctor knows that. He's still been teacher and that with her, and it's lovely to see. You've then got Jacqueline Pierce playing Sherilyn Harper. Slightly misguided woman about town, slightly misguided person in regards to the way she's dealing with things. She's a politician, she's trying to get power in the next general election, 2002 general election, they're saying in this story. Actually, of course, in real life, the general election was 2001, but they wouldn't know that because it was 2000 this was released, so they wouldn't know that at the time. And she comes across as kind of, not quite Thatcherite, but kind of Thatcher mixed in with what you would see with kind of like Nigel Farage later on, with the way it works, with the characterization, kind of right-wing, with all the rhetoric, wants to use a bit of fear to try and get some understanding of people and to get them on board with her. And it looks like she is flying high in the polls for most of it until the United Front comes in and starts to cause problems. But yeah, she's there for 2 assassination attempts, gets nearly killed twice on stage. It's interesting how that pans out, and Jacqueline Pierce plays it with a very cool, calm, collected role. She's very good at doing those cool, calm, collected roles. She does that in other Big Finish orders she turns up in later on, and it's kind of like the role she has of Cassini in The Two Doctors. It's kind of like that sort of character, and obviously Servalan and Blake 7, that's what she's best known for. She seems to have that mould of playing these cool, calm, collected older women who want to have their own way with it and sometimes fail in doing so. You then got Walter Jacobs, played by Mark McDonnell. Very fearful, it's interesting playing a character who's very much lost a couple of marbles through all the fear and the hatred he's got through the creature, and the fact he's kind of gone mad, which the Doctor sickeningly actually plays on at the end of the 3rd episode, beginning of the 4th, to try and disarm Walter, which he doesn't appreciate that much. But the whole character, the way Walter is, he's very skittish at times, he's a bit fearful of what's happening to him, and it comes to Ace to try and be the calming influence and the supportive influence to get him back into some sort of semblance to help the Doctor and Ace overall, and it's played very well by Mark McDonnell. You've then got Stephen Keyser, played by Mark Wright, the original madman who was trying to kill Sherilyn Harper. He's gone completely potty by the time we get to him in the story, and that's a bit forceful, but that's the way it comes across. His mind is flipped, basically, with this creature, which is interesting content. I'll get through the creature in a minute, but yeah, the creature's made him flip by this point, which is really sad, but also probably very true. You've then got the radio DJ, Mick Thompson, played by Sophie Aldred's husband, Vince Henderson, and this kind of Scouser, Geordie, it's not Geordie, it's more Scouser radio host, played very much to the kind of right-wing talk sport, talk radio type idea that you have of the late noughties, early 2000s, and is a precursor to the sort of DJs you get in LBC radio nowadays. He's got that kind of character to him. He's a pot stirrer, really. It shows later in the story when he's up against in the field with the rioters, where he's persuaded to go meet the Doctor in the warehouse because they think at that point he's the creature in them in the warehouse. And it shows his cowardly side. He doesn't want to be in the field, he just wants to stir the pot. He's not really a conviction person in that respect. He's just there to get ratings and entertain, and he classes himself as entertainer, which is an interesting characterization. But Vince Henderson plays it very coolly, and you believe the character. In fact, sometimes you're rooting for him to fall on his backside. Never does, but you are sometimes rooting for him to fall on his backside, and that's the mark of a great writing and a great character, when you want to root for him for falling on his backside sometimes, but when the push comes to shove, you support him with what he's trying to do. You've then got Jonathan Clarkson playing Paul Tanner, which is the old acquaintance of Ace. He makes a remark that Ace doesn't look any different from 20 years before. That's strictly probably true, because Ace had been travelling and obviously Tanner is about 15 years older than what he was when he first saw Ace in Perryvale. And Ace does rely on that relationship a little bit at times. He's kind of like the fixer. He gets involved as an insider with the New Britannia, which fools Roger Callingham, the secretary to Sharon Harper, and Harper herself, of course. It's played quite strongly by Jonathan Clarkson. You can tell there's some sort of relationship between him and Ace, which is great to see. And it's actually a nice little role overall. You've then got Hugh Walters playing Roger Callingham, playing a character that he's done before, a kind of ever-present secretary who's trying to help their boss lady. He does that in Revelation of the Daleks, where he last appeared. But I love the role he's got. He's kind of like he was originally an agency man in the Secret Service and the UN, so he knows about the Doctor. He knows about Doctor's unit connections and how they all tie in. And he thinks initially the Doctor is working for UNIT, but then it's confirmed that obviously the UN had no idea about it at the end because the Doctor's like a free agent. But it's very interesting how he set up the United Front initially to give some sort of publicity for the New Britannia, because he wants New Britannia to be the good guys compared to the United Front, which is, I think, is really interesting how that all pans out. And Hugh Walter plays it perfectly between trying to be the fawning secretary, the man who knows a lot. He seems he does care for Harper, and it does come across in the story. And then you got Jack Gallagher, who plays Alexander Karadzic, the leader of the United Front, which is an interesting character. He's very fearful, and he mistakenly shoots Ace at the end of the second episode, but I don't think he means it. I think he's doing it as a fear tactic. And we find that he's obviously, at the end, we find out that he is actually working for Roderick, which is interesting overall. Some interesting points of the plot and the story for this. You've got the start, obviously, with the attempted assassination of Harper, and the assassin's attack by the creature, the Fearmonger. And then the whole thing of Mick Thompson's radio show being set up with some conspiracy theories. It's the whole conversation set up. The Doctor is introduced as Ace as Miss McShane to Stephen, which is the first instance of Dorothy McShane being used in the series, which I think is interesting. And then near the end of the first episode, they find Walter in the theatre where Harper is having a speech, and it ends up that Harper is nearly killed. Walter has a bomb underneath the stage, right underneath where Harper is speaking, which is a dead man switch. So basically, if he lets it go, that's it, boom. But the Doctor and Ace manage to turn it around and stop that from happening, because up the stairs of the United Front come in and burst in with some modern alien tech guns, which we've obviously found from some sort of connection with UNIT in the past, which obviously we now know was obviously a relation through the United Nations set connections that Roderick had. They stop Walter. Karadzic sends a tape to Mick Thompson talking about how he was the one that stormed the theatre and his group, and the whole pitched battle between New Britannia and the United Front throughout the rest of the story starts from this. So Tanner goes to the New Britannia to inform them about the United Front. Harper's not in the office, but Tanner's trying to distract it while they set up a sort of device in Harper's office, the Doctor and Ace. Doesn't work, they get caught. They do it in the radio studio later on, as I mentioned. As I say, you've got the gunshot of Ace being shot. She isn't killed, but she is injured and put in hospital, which helps the plot. And it reveals the character of the Doctor, the fact that he doesn't really fear much now, but he fears of Ace dying. So he really cares for Ace, and he doesn't want to see her hurt. And that comes across a bit more at the end as well, when Ace gets taken over by the creature. So Ace thinks the Doctor has been affected by the creature and is trying to use the force field, because the force field will crush the creature, but not crush the person. You know, it's been set in such a way it won't crush the person. So Ace thinks the Doctor is the man who's been taken over by the creature. It was Ace that's been taken over, and the whole flip about the creature is actually the people who hear the voice, the distorted voice, and that creature's manipulating it in such a way that you think it's somebody else when it's not. It's them that's got the creature in it, which is an interesting setup. So Alex gets talked out of shooting anymore. The Doctor and Ace escape to the hospital, of course. Ace then gets the bomb that was left there, that Walter was going to use, and goes to the warehouse. Thinks about using the bomb, potentially, but the Doctor saves the day by getting the creature out of Ace, which I think is a really interesting setup. Overall, the plotline's pretty well written by Jonathan Blum. It's very much a Doctor Who story from the era. You can tell it's definitely one that would work on telly in an urban setting, and I think they were going to go down that route a little bit in season 27, so it's interesting hearing it and the story. As I say, the main characters work quite well. I like the story as a whole. I think it's an interesting listen. It's possibly maybe not one I'd listen to all the time, but it's certainly one I'd like to come back to here and there. but it's still strong enough for me to be able to listen to it. It's not like Land of the Dead where I can take it or leave it. If I choose to listen to it, I will. Most of the early 7th Doctor and Ace stuff is like that, and my God, when Hex comes in, it makes it's even better. But we'll get to that when we get to that. There's a bit more to go before we get that far. But overall, I do like this story, and I would give this review a score of 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. So let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Big Finish stories reviewed so far. The Fearmonger sits in at 3.5 TARDISes out of 5, alongside the Sirens of Time, Phantasmagoria and Whispers of Terror. At the bottom is 3 TARDISes out of 5 with Land of the Dead. That's it guys, thank you guys for watching and listening as always. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. And if you want to help support the channel even more, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/Deanstructor. For as little as £1 or $1 a month, you can help support the channel. So just going to patreon.com/Deanstructor. That's it for now. Thank you guys for watching as always. I'm back on Wednesday at 6 PM GMT with the review of The Name of the Doctor. I hope to see you then. And then on Sunday, I'm back with a 6 Facts. So hopefully you can join me for that. But that's it guys, thanks very much for watching and listening of course, and I'll see you later.